A police officer walked into our office almost every day. We trusted him completely, until I found out he wasn't a cop at all. I swear, if someone had told me a year ago that a guy in a police uniform would casually walk into my office almost every day, grab a cup of coffee, nod at my boss, and stroll around like he owned the place, I would have laughed in their face. Like, come on, this is New York, not some TV drama. But I'm not laughing anymore, because what started as a weird curiosity ended up turning into one of the scariest realizations of my life. The cop wasn't a cop at all. It all began so innocently. The first time he showed up, nobody even questioned it. He walked in with that confident stride, the kind of posture that just screams authority. The uniform looked sharp navy blue, pressed, badge shining on his chest, belt loaded with the usual gear, radio, handcuffs, flashlight, the whole package. My boss, Mr. Harris, welcomed him with a quick handshake like they already knew each other. Then the guy introduced himself to the staff, said he was Officer Daniels, just doing routine security checks. Routine security checks in an IT company. That already sounds a little strange, right? But back then, we didn't think twice. In fact, a lot of us were kind of relieved. Our office was in Midtown, and break-ins weren't exactly rare. Having a cop around felt reassuring. Some employees even joked about how cool it was. We've got our own guard dog in uniform, one guy whispered to me with a grin. And honestly, I felt the same. Weeks passed, and Officer Daniels kept showing up. Not every single day, but often enough that we started seeing him as part of the office background. Like the guy from FedEx who drops off packages you don't even blink anymore. He'd stroll around, sometimes chatting with the receptionist, sometimes making small talk about sports. Always polite, always calm. But here's where it started to feel off. He didn't really act like a cop. Sure, he wore the uniform, but instead of checking doors, cameras, or fire exits, the kind of things a real officer might care about, he hovered near people's desks. He'd peek at documents, glance at open laptops, even ask casual questions about client lists or where we keep financial backups. At first, it was subtle enough that we brushed it off. But once you notice, you can't unsee it. I remember one afternoon, I stayed late working on a project. The office was quiet, most people had already gone home. Daniel showed up, like clockwork. He walked straight to the back room where we keep the servers. I thought, maybe he's just being thorough. But then I realized, he had no key card to open that room. Only employees do. Yet, 2 minutes later, I heard the door click. Somehow, he got in. I froze at my desk, pretending to keep typing, my heart pounding like crazy. After about 5 minutes, he walked out, nodded at me like nothing happened, and left. That was the first real red flag. Still, I kept it to myself. I didn't want to look paranoid. Who the hell was I to question a cop? But over time, the little things piled up, like his badge. One time, I got a closer look at it, and something about it felt off. The numbers were faint, almost scratched out, like they'd been tampered with. Another time, I noticed he wore Nike sneakers with his uniform. Not polished boots, just regular black Nikes. It sounds small, but when you add it all together, it starts to scream. And then came the day that still makes my stomach drop. He walked into the break room while I was pouring coffee, and he gave me this smile, not friendly, not polite, but the kind of smile that says, I know something about you. Then he tapped the vending machine, grabbed a soda, and casually asked, Hey, where do you guys keep your off-site backups? Just curious. Security, backups. Why the hell would a cop care about where our backups were? I mumbled something about the cloud and walked out. My hands were shaking. It was too weird. Later that night, lying in bed, I kept replaying the scene in my head. All those little details I'd ignored: the sneakers, the weird badge, the fact that my boss never once asked him for ID. It all stacked up. And for the first time, the thought hit me like a brick. What if this guy isn't a cop at all? I tried to brush it off, tell myself I was overthinking, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. And trust me, when your gut screams at you in situations like that, you should listen, because that was only the beginning. Now imagine what happens next. But before that, smash that like button and hit subscribe, cause the craziest part is just getting started. The thing about suspicion is that once it plants itself in your head, it spreads like wildfire. After that night in the break room, I couldn't stop replaying everything I'd seen and heard. Officer Daniels wasn't just off anymore, he was flat out suspicious. But here's the crazy part, no one else seemed to notice. Every time he walked in, People greeted him like he was part of the team. "Morning, officer." Our receptionist, Kate, would chirp as if he were her favorite neighbor. Some of the guys in IT even fist bumped him. And my boss? Don't even get me started. Mr. Harris acted like Daniels was an old friend. They'd go into his office, shut the door, and talk for half an hour. When Daniels left, Harris always looked tense, like someone had wrung him out. I decided I couldn't just keep this to myself anymore. So one afternoon, while Daniels was strutting around near the copy machine, I leaned over to my coworker Dave. "Hey," I whispered, "don't you think it's a little weird that this cop shows up all the time?" Dave shrugged. "I mean, yeah, but Midtown's sketchy. Probably just extra security." "Why?" I hesitated. Should I tell him about the sneakers? The badge that looked fake? The server room incident? My heart thumped, but I chickened out. "Nothing, just seems unusual, that's all." Dave smirked. "Man, relax. If anything, it makes me feel safer." Safer. Right. If only he knew. A week later, the tension hit a new peak. Daniels came in earlier than usual, and instead of his normal casual stroll, he looked sharp, focused. He went straight to the HR department and asked to review employee records. What the hell does a cop need with employee records? I sat at my desk, pretending to type, while my stomach twisted itself into knots. Kate handed over a stack of files like it was nothing. I swear, I saw him slide one into his jacket when he thought no one was watching. That night, I couldn't sleep. I started Googling like a madman. Do police conduct random checks at private offices? Can cops demand employee files? The answers? A resounding no. Every source said the same thing. Unless there's a warrant, police can't just waltz into a company and snoop around. That's when I knew I had to confront my boss. The next morning, I knocked on Harris's door. He looked up, clearly annoyed. "What is it, Jason?" I took a deep breath. "Sir, don't you think it's strange that this Officer Daniels keeps coming around? He's asking questions that don't sound like police business." Harris's jaw tightened. "Jason, don't start this. I'm serious," I pressed. "I checked online. Cops can't just." He cut me off, his voice sharp. I said, "Drop it. You don't know what you're talking about." That was it. Meeting over. He looked at me like I just poked a bear, but his reaction only made me more suspicious. Why was he shutting me down so fast? Why did he look nervous, like I'd touched a nerve? The next day, things got worse. Daniels cornered me near the elevators. He leaned in close, his voice low. "Hey, Jason, you work with the servers, right? You must know where the financial backups are stored." I forced a laugh. "Man, I just write code. I don't touch that stuff." He stared at me for a long second, then smiled that same unnerving smile from the break room. "Sure you don't." Then he walked off. My legs almost gave out right there. He knew my name, he knew my role, and he was fishing for information. That night, I sat in my apartment, staring at the ceiling, and one thought kept drilling into my skull. This guy isn't a cop. He's a goddamn thief in a uniform. But the real question was, what the hell was he after? Paranoia is like background noise. You can ignore it for a while, but once it gets too loud, you can't focus on anything else. By this point, Officer Daniels wasn't just some guy in uniform. He was a puzzle piece that didn't fit, and the more I stared at the picture, the more I realized the whole damn puzzle was crooked. It all came to a head one Friday afternoon. Daniels strolled in like he always did, but something about him felt different. His shirt wasn't tucked in properly, his belt sagged like it was too heavy, and for the first time, he didn't even bother greeting Kate at the front desk. He looked distracted. I tried to keep my head down, but I couldn't help watching. He marched straight to Mr. Harris's office. No knock, no pause. Just walked right in. The door closed, and a heavy silence filled the office. People exchanged glances, but no one said a word. Curiosity ate me alive, so I slipped closer, pretending to grab papers from the printer. Through the thin wall, I caught pieces of their conversation. Harris's voice was tight, angry. "You can't keep doing this. People are starting to notice." Daniels's reply was calm, almost smug. "Then maybe you should pay faster. Unless you want me to start asking louder questions." My stomach dropped. Pay? What the hell was my boss paying him for? A few minutes later, the door opened and Daniels walked out with that same cocky smirk. He glanced right at me, like he knew I'd been listening, and my blood turned to ice. That night, I couldn't shake it anymore. I needed answers, so I did something I probably shouldn't have. I followed him. After work, Daniels left the building and headed downtown. I stayed a block behind, heart racing, trying not to look obvious. He wasn't going to a precinct, that much was clear. Instead, he ducked into a rundown bar near 9th Avenue. I waited outside, pretending to scroll my phone, but through the dirty window I could see him laughing with two guys who definitely didn't look like cops. Leather jackets, tattoos, one with a face scar that screamed not nip material. I snapped a quick photo with my phone. The quality was grainy, but clear enough. Officer Daniels drinking a beer with two men who looked like criminals straight out of Central Casting. When he left, I didn't follow. I was too shaken. I went straight home, locked the door, and stared at that photo for hours. Every time I zoomed in on his fake smile, I felt my stomach twist. The next morning, I showed the picture to Dave. He laughed at first. Dude, maybe they're undercover cops. Undercover cops in leather jackets with face scars, drinking in dive bars. I snapped. Dave stopped laughing. Okay, yeah, that's sketchy. Finally, someone else saw it. But instead of relief, I just felt more pressure. Because now it wasn't just paranoia in my head, it was real. Things escalated fast after that. On Monday, Daniels came back, but this time he was edgy, restless. He wandered from desk to desk, asking pointed questions. Who's in charge of payroll? Where do you guys back up client contracts? His eyes darted around, like he was cataloging the entire office. At one point, he leaned over my desk, staring right at my monitor. Careful with that code, Jason. Wouldn't want to make a mistake. It wasn't a joke. His tone was low, threatening. I clenched my fists under the desk, pretending to laugh it off, but inside I was boiling. That evening, as I was packing up, I noticed something that made my skin crawl. My desk drawer was open. I never leave it open. Inside, the copy of my apartment lease, the one I'd accidentally brought to work weeks earlier, was missing. That was the moment I realized Daniels wasn't just poking around the company. He was digging into me, personally, and if that didn't terrify me enough, the next day I found the lease back in my drawer. Except now, there was a sticky note attached. In messy handwriting, it read, "Nice place you got there." My hands shook so hard I almost dropped it. This wasn't paranoia anymore. This was a threat. When someone leaves a note about your apartment inside your locked desk drawer, it stops being a weird office thing and turns into a full-on nightmare. I sat there staring at those words, "Nice place you got there," and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. He'd been in my drawer. He'd been in my life. I knew then I couldn't keep this to myself anymore. If Daniels had access to my personal stuff, what was next? Breaking into my apartment? Planting something in my car? The thought made me nauseous. That night, I called my cousin Nate. He's a lawyer, not criminal law exactly, more real estate, but close enough that I thought maybe he'd know what to do. We met at a diner near Times Square, one of those 24-hour joints where the coffee tastes like burnt tar, but the booths are private. I slid the sticky note across the table. Nate frowned as he read it. "Jesus, Jason, this is messed up. You're telling me this guy's pretending to be a cop?" I nodded. "Yeah, uniform, badge, everything, but it doesn't add up. And now he's digging into my personal life." Nate rubbed his face. "Okay, first thing, you need to stop confronting him. Don't let him know you're onto him. If he's bold enough to pull this off, he's dangerous. Second, you need evidence. Photos, recordings, anything that proves he's not who he says he is." I told Nate about the picture I'd already taken at the bar. He nodded but didn't look reassured. "That's a start. But if you go to the cops with just that, they might laugh you out of the station. You need more. Something concrete." The words dangerous and concrete echoed in my head as I walked back home. I didn't sleep. Every creak in the hallway outside my apartment made me jump. At one point, I swore I heard footsteps buzz outside my door. I sat there with a baseball bat until dawn, heart pounding in my ears. The next day, Daniels showed up again. This time, he didn't smile. He stalked through the office, quiet, scanning the room like a predator. When his eyes landed on me, I felt pinned to my chair. He strolled over, leaned against my desk, and said, almost casually, "You live on 34th Street, right? Nice neighborhood." I froze. That wasn't in the lease he'd stolen. That was recent, which meant he'd been outside my building. I forced myself to play dumb. Yeah, been there a while." He grinned. "Good spot. Easy to get to, easy to leave from." Then he just walked off, leaving me trembling. That was it. I couldn't sit around anymore. That evening, I went back to Nate. We hashed out a plan. I'd start collecting hard proof. He gave me a small audio recorder, something discreet I could keep in my pocket. Get him on tape asking something no real cop would ask. That'll be your ticket. So the next week, I carried that recorder everywhere. Every time Daniels came around, my chest tightened. but I clicked it on. And little by little, I got material. Him asking about where payroll files are kept. Him pressing Kate about who signs off on client payments. None of it sounded remotely like police work. But the more I gathered, the more reckless he became. One afternoon, I caught him standing in the server room again. He didn't see me at first. I managed to snap a clear photo of him fiddling with the backup drives. But then he turned, saw me, and his eyes locked on mine. For a second, we just stood there in silence. Then he smiled, that same, icy smile. And he said, "Careful where you point that phone, Jason. Phones get lost. People do too." I backed away, my heart slamming in my chest, pretending like it was nothing. But I knew, he knew, and the game had just gotten deadly. At some point, fear turns into anger. That's where I was. Daniels had threatened me, invaded my personal space, and now he was bold enough to poke around the server room like he owned the damn place. I couldn't just sit and wait to become his next victim. The recorder in my pocket was filling up with proof. Each clip sounded more damning. Daniels asking about payroll files, demanding client lists, hinting at faster payments. But would anyone believe me? Would real cops take me seriously, or laugh me out of the station? I decided I couldn't risk going alone. That evening, I sat down with Nate again. We played the recordings in his apartment, the grainy voices filling the room. At one point, Daniels's low growl came through. "Phones get lost. People do too." Nate shut the laptop with a snap. "That's a threat. If you don't go to the police with this, you're insane." I wanted to. God, I wanted to march into the NIPT and slam that recorder on the desk. But then the doubt crept in. What if Daniels had friends on the inside? What if Harris was in on it too? That would explain why he always looked so drained after their closed-door meetings. The next day at work, I almost lost my nerve completely. Daniels arrived earlier than usual, pacing the office like a lion in a cage. Everyone else greeted him like normal, but when his eyes locked on mine, I felt my throat tighten. He walked over, leaned close, and whispered, "You've been busy, Jason." My blood ran cold. Did he know about the recordings, the photo, my late night following? I forced a weak laugh, pretending not to understand, but his smirk told me everything. He suspected. That night, I couldn't go home. I rode the subway for hours, circling the city, paranoid that he was behind me. Around midnight, I ducked into a diner in Queens, ordered bad coffee, and sat staring at my phone. And then it buzzed. Unknown number. One message. "Stop digging, or else." That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about the office anymore. He had me in his sights, and if I didn't act soon, I might not get another chance. The text "Stop digging, or else" sat on my phone screen like a glowing threat. My thumb hovered over the delete button, but I couldn't press it. Proof was proof, even if it scared the hell out of me. The next morning, I walked into the office expecting Daniels to be there, grinning like always. But he wasn't. His absence didn't calm me, it made everything worse. Everyone worked like normal, typing away, sipping coffee, while I sat frozen, waiting for him to appear. By noon, Harris called an all-hands meeting. His face was pale, his tie crooked. "There's been an incident," he muttered. He didn't look anyone in the eye. "The company is under investigation. Effective immediately. Operations are suspended." The room erupted. People shouted questions, demanded answers, but Harris just left the room, sweat glistening on his forehead. I knew it. Something blew up. That evening, I decided to finally do it. I went to the police with everything: the photo, the recordings, the note, the text. The desk sergeant listened, nodding along, then said words that made my blood run cold. "We've had no officer by that name in the department ever." Relief and terror hit me at once. I was right, he wasn't a cop. But if he wasn't, then who the hell was he? The cops took my statement and promised to look into it. But walking back out onto the street, I didn't feel safer. I felt exposed. That night, around AM, I woke to a sound outside my apartment window. Not footsteps, not a knock, just a car engine idling. I peeked through the blinds and saw headlights glowing in the dark, aimed directly at my building. I stood there, heart hammering, for what felt like hours. Eventually, the car drove away. And now I'm writing this, staring at my door, half expecting a knock. Daniels vanished, the company collapsed, and the cops act like they've got it handled. But I know better, because once someone like him knows your name, your address, your life, they don't just disappear.